All right. Yes. As he said, I will not be giving SEO advice. Welcome back to the stage. Both of you were on a panel in New York, and I know that was a lot of people's favorite panel. And then you were actually answering questions from the back of the room.
Sorry about that.
No, people loved it. That's why we brought you back like 3 times. So to get started, we are going to just kind of delve into what's it like to work on SEO for a large publication or digital property, because you have Complex, you have ESPN, you have Disney.
I guess I could start. There's pros and cons to working at a large publication. Once again, I have the background of an agency level and now the large publications, and there's pros and cons with everything. On the agency side, you do have to worry about more clients versus a large publication where it's more teams. So there's a lot more that you have to do internally when it comes to large publication. But overall, I think it's so rewarding to work at a large publication, especially when you are as active as I am in the content creation and also the technical developments.
Well, so is this on? Okay. So I actually only work on ESPN,
Mm.
because there's other people that do other things at Disney, but ESPN is huge and it's global and it's got lots of moving parts. Um, it is similar to working on agency stuff, but whereas with an agency, you had the luxury of saying, "Here's a list of stuff you need to do, go do it," and then you don't have to look at those people or hear them bitching about you. Um, at the when you're in house, anything you're asking other groups to do, they're looking at you every day, and if they hate you, um, because you've asked them to do something they don't want to do, it weighs on you a little bit. So I feel like there's a little bit more finesse, a little bit more politics, and but the tasks themselves are very similar. I don't know that it's necessarily that much different, but there is a maintaining, those office relationships and those departmental relationships, and dealing more with, you can't quite kick in the door and just, be the bearer of bad news, as you can tell I am want to be. Um, you have to be a little bit smoother about the managing people.
And there's different types of in-house strategies. I know, like Complex, we keep everything in-house when it comes to SEO. I've seen other publications that still work with agencies, even if they do have a small team internally. So the structure really depends on just the type of publication you do have and what the setup is there.
So, what is a typical day in SEO like for both of you?
It is long. It is a lot of meetings. It is a lot of deciphering errors. So the main focus at Complex for myself are definitely editorial and technical. That's how I divide my days. But then we have so many teams, e-commerce, we have YouTube teams that I try to podcast. So I try to be as involved as I can as a one person team. Sometimes it is hard to be in all these meetings, but you make it work. I think just being engaged in all of these meetings, and the fun part for me is creating strategy that will reflect. There is SEO for YouTube, there's SEO for podcasts, there's SEO for ecom, there's SEO for a lot of things. So just being that person, that go-to person for SEO internally, once again, it's really rewarding, at least for myself.
I also split my time between editorial and technical. I actually I will sit a day in our editorial building, and then the next day I will sit the day in the technical building, so that the other teams can see my face and are familiar with me, especially the developers. It's good for me to build those relationships. I don't know how many of you are. We have a lot of buildings. I know that's not common to everybody, but that's how it is there. Um, you have to schedule your day, but I just find that I'm accustomed to and I expect that I will be interrupted constantly with random questions that I wasn't expecting. And you just kind of have to be open to that, because the job is education and the job is explaining things to people, because not everybody has that 3D model spinning in their head of where all the moving parts are. And sometimes people have questions, and I just have to be ready to stop what I'm doing and answer those questions, whether it's via Slack, and I've got Slack on my phone. And I was walking over here today, I started getting hit with Slack messages like, "We need you to take a look at this. This is wrong." I'm like, "I'm walking to a conference. I'll look at it in a minute." But they need to know that I'm available, and they need to know that their question will be answered, in a timely fashion, regardless of what else I have going on. So yeah, I mean, it's you got to budget your time, but I expect to be interrupted constantly, and that's good though, because if they're coming to me with questions, that means they're not looking up some goofy answer on the internet and then screwing something up, because that's the worst. Is, well, I thought I was helping. Well, you brought the site down, you know.
Right. Right.
And so I'm assuming you both have worked for smaller publishing companies. I am curious as to what is similar and what is different now that you are working at bigger digital entities, or if a lot of it kind of, you were saying, Carolyn, a lot of it crosses over still.
It crosses over, but my big difference is that depending on how small we're talking, I was very accustomed to having access to go in and just fix things. So I could go in and just change stories. I could go in and add links. I could get into the server and reboot it if I wanted to. There were things I could do that I didn't have to ask or beg permission or cajole someone else into doing. And in a very large enterprise, there are people, it is their job to gatekeep the server. It is their job to gatekeep GitHub. It is their job to gatekeep all these different things. So if I want something done, I have to open a Jira ticket. And then we have to have a meeting to scope the Jira ticket. And then we have to schedule that. And then we have to budget for dev time and all this other stuff. So it takes a lot longer to get stuff done. And I'm one of those, I might be type A, I don't, but I very much like to be able to do things myself, and that's been something that I've been working on, trying to make myself better. Let go a little. That's my big difference.
Likewise, I think the strategy is the same. Whether it's small or big, you have to just decipher the website, find errors, see where the opportunities are. How are you going to implement this? But of course, when it is a smaller site, it is easier for testing. I think there's more creative room for testing versus when it's a large publication. Once again, piggybacking on what Carolyn said, there is a lot of politics. So even an AMP strategy that I started early this year is still being talked about, because you have to, it is a domino effect. Just because it's good for SEO doesn't mean it's going to be great for another team. So I think keeping in mind that it's not as easy to test out some stuff, and if it does end up being tested, it will take longer.
So what are some of the common questions you get at work and across the different teams? Are they similar questions across the different teams, or do you find that, the editorial team has very different questions than, say, like the dev team?
I'm very fortunate that our president is very SEO savvy. I know other publications aren't as lucky. Maybe they get asked, what is SEO? And you have to do a lot of convincing and just sort of educating people what SEO is. I think it goes back to the education portion. But at Complex, I think there's a fair amount of people who understand SEO, and those who don't understand, they understand that I'm an open book and I'm there for anything and all resources. Um, but yeah, the most common questions I get at work is probably what happened, or when something really good happens, it's what happened as well. So whether it's a pro or con in regards to traffic or movement, keyword rankings, people want to know what happened.
The majority of my day is, we have a Slack channel just for SEO questions. So our editorial team will post, this is a story that I'm going to post tomorrow. This is my headline. This is my lead. Is there anything I could do differently? Is this good enough? What would you change, Carolyn? Am I targeting the right keywords? And that's really, it's nice for me that they're asking, because it shows that not only did they hear the guidelines and they're trying to adhere to the guidelines, even if they don't necessarily, because it's not black and white. It's not like I can say, you must do this, this, and this, and everything will be fine. There's judgment calls, and I can't necessarily teach them to make good judgments all the time. So the fact that they're asking is great, because then, and we're asking in a public channel. So everybody can see the thought process that goes into how we're making the decision. And I think that as everyone sees over and over again how we make these decisions, they'll be able to make the decisions without me having to offer my input.
Similar question, which I'm sure will have very different answers. What are the most common questions you get from friends or family? My brother's a computer programmer, and I'm pretty sure for 5 years my mom thought he built computers. So I'm sure you get lots of different questions and you have to answer it differently.
People think, well, family and friends think I work with Google, well, work at Google. And I'm like, no, that's not what I do. But just because they hear me talking about Google so much, because it is the top organic just source for complex, um, they think I work at Google. But it's a mix of question. What is SEO? What does it stand for? Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And it's interesting enough that we all do it on an everyday thing. It's exciting when I get to tell them the elements that are in searches. Even the people also ask modules, feature snippets, just AMP, knowing what those things are so it's exciting when you actually get to talk to someone who really doesn't know what the search just ecosystem is made up of. So yeah, I think the most common questions that I do get is what is SEO? Can you explain a little more? And if I do have a website, how can you help me with this website in regards to SEO?
They don't ask me.
You're lucky.
They have
Yeah.
PTSD
Yeah.
from asking you before.
I know.
So I think maybe I have this tendency to do you ever see Saturday Night Live and it was like Nick, your company's computer guy, and you'd ask him a question, be like, move, and then he'd kick you off your own computer and do stuff and then lecture you. So I
You relate to them?
do you know what mansplaining is? So apparently I nerdsplain. And that's not because I think particular genders are less smart than I am. I just think everyone's less smart than I am. And
Quality.
Right.
and so my family doesn't ask me questions they don't want to get me started on.
Do
So
they ever ask for help? Like if they have their personal projects or just their own personal websites, do they ever ask, "Hey, Carolyn, help me out with some SEO"?
my sister did once, and I sent her a proposal with the option to pay the invoice at the bottom, and she hasn't talked to me in 10 years. So
What metrics do you personally keep a really close eye on, and are those metrics similar to those that you would suggest some of our smaller publishers do?
Let me think. With with the core algorithm, just traffic overall, keeping an eye on that. Keyword rankings. I think anytime a core algorithm, and we'll probably go more in depth into this, I think anytime there is some sort of shift in just the way Google is crawling certain things, I think you have to just be mindful of your rankings and see if there is any movement. Sometimes it's for the best, sometimes it's not. And just paying attention to any drops. And then one thing I really like to do if I do see a shift is there commonality between the keywords or pages that did increase or decrease? Is there a pattern that I'm seeing? Was it guides? Was it certain lists? Was it specific medical terms? Not that we really touch medical terms, but are we experts in this topic? So those are the questions I start to think about when anytime I see any movement in keyword rankings. But of course, you have your broad just metrics, which are sessions, bounce rates, new users, impressions, all that good stuff, and page speed once again.
because I like to focus on the news aspect of at our site, I pay a lot of attention to the amount of time and the number of articles that we have that sit in the top 3 positions in the news box. So for a given story, how long was our story in the top news carousel or in the leading the cluster in Google News? So we're looking to see, are we showing up? that's really important. And if we're not for a particular sport, then I need to go dig in and figure out why, because, again, in my head, I should always be there. And if I'm not, then there's a problem. So
And now for every publisher's favorite topic, Google Core Updates. How have you responded to the Google Core Updates, and what would you say to websites that want to know what to do when they're announced?
It's hard not to panic. I've gotten to the point that you do not have to panic. Um, Definitely give it time. I'm one to still check every day just to see what the movement, because one day you could be really great and the next day you could drastically see a decline in traffic. But definitely give it some days when you're doing real comparisons. Just don't do, I would suggest even a week, 2 weeks to see the pre and post core algorithm changes. If there's any difference, once again, if there was an increase or a decline. But I know it's hard. It's easier said than done. Don't panic because there's so many per year. Um, I like that Google has been announcing ahead of time when these things are going to happen instead of them happening and you really not knowing that's going to happen. Um, but yeah, I try not to panic, take it day by day. And then when I do my analysis, I definitely give it some time to really analyze the data.
you have to give it at least 2 weeks, like really, because if you're looking at it day to day, you never look at anything day to day. Compare week over week or month over month, and you see perfectly matching, ebbs and flows with your traffic. It's not like you're always right here, right? So day to day literally tells you nothing. And all it's going to do is make you anxiety riddled and upset your stomach, and you'll worry yourself into gray hair and early wrinkles. So give it 2 weeks, give it a month, unless everything just like falls through the floor.
Which could happen.
And if it falls through the floor, then okay, you have my permission to panic. But it's probably not. So don't worry about it until there's something to worry about, because that's just unnecessary expenditure of energy. And most of the time, it's not going to hurt you unless you are doing something sneaky or sketchy, and they're releasing an update to close that loophole. You're probably fine. You know, just you got to listen to me
Zen.
talk,
Yeah.
Captain Type A. You got to chill. You gotta zen out.
Also, don't go crazy trying to optimize your site before a core algo is announced. Don't try fixing a whole bunch of stuff thinking you're not going to hit, because then you really wouldn't even know where to pinpoint if you do all these fixes before and then you get hit
Yeah,
with a
how are
core.
you gonna know what?
You cleaned up a whole bunch of internal links, you did this, you did that, and then it's like, okay, but I don't know exactly what was the factor after I did all these changes.
I know a lot of times we tell our publishers, like, when you're making changes, then don't make a bunch of changes all at once, because you won't know it's actually working
Well, yeah,
as
because if
well.
you break
Exactly.
something, how do you know what to roll back? And even Google breaks things. They tested the way that they were tracking. It was either AdSense traffic or UTM traffic. They changed the tracking code in it for like 4 hours one day, and somebody caught it and noticed, but then they rolled it back. So they're doing stuff all the time, and we don't always catch it. So you know, pay attention to, and maybe if you don't have software that is notating your logs when there's a change, so that as you're looking at, your day to day, there's a little flag that says, oh, this is the day the core update went live. This is the update that I changed all my links. You need to be annotating your logs so that as you're looking at the ups and downs, if there's something that correlates to an action that you took, you know that, and you're not just sitting there going, well, I wonder what happened. You want to have that documentation, because documentation is information, and that will greatly reduce your anxiety level.
Even if you annotate it on your side, I know tools like SEMrush and Search
Automatically.
Metrics have incredible features that let you know this is exactly when an algo change happened. So you get to see the Google symbol right on the graphs, and you get to see if anything did occur after the change.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there's some newer publishers here and some that have probably had websites about my entire lifetime. So if you were starting a content-based site today, what would be your key to success in SEO? It is definitely always changing, and then especially like the last 10 years, it's something to keep up with.
I-
You wouldn't start one?
Well, no, that's not it. Everyone's been. I don't know how this is going to go over. So people at like, oh, we're getting away from link building links. Links are still a really core part of determining authority and getting you boosted up. And I know that you can't buy links, and I know it's hard to build links, and I know it's difficult, but those really are figuring out how you're going to go about and get powerful sites to link to yours is really kind of that critical linchpin in getting your SEO stuff off the ground. Just throwing your website out there, it's not like if you build it, they will come. That's not true. Like you have to have some kind of inbound acknowledgement from people that are established so that they're conferring their blessing on you, and then it's okay for you to start ranking. It's I wish it wasn't like that. It would be great if we weren't all still so reliant on links, but I think we are. I think no matter how hard they try to rig the algorithms so that it's not such a big thing, it's it's still a thing.
If I was growing a content based site, I am growing my own ecom site. So that's one thing. But even ecom needs content. So if you are focused on ecom, make sure you have good editorial as well to support your products and just a good ecosystem there. But if it's just content based, know exactly who your audience is, who you're targeting, what are your topics, and create good content, unique content, content that really resonates with your reader. Um, I go back to just platforms that all their traffic is based on generic lists. It's what works for them. They know who their audience is. This is how we're going to target that audience. So I think just being true to your audience. Yes, SEO is key, and I am an SEO professional, but also think about content outside of SEO. Where is this going to perform well? Is it something that would work well on podcasts? Is it something that works well as a video on YouTube? You have to think about expanding content. Of course, definitely keep it content based for your organic traffic, but also think about your channels outside of organic.
What advice would you give to people? I know there was people earlier that said they struggled finding someone to help with SEO, and you had suggested that they learn it themselves. What would you suggest for them? Where to go? Good resources for SEO if they're willing to take it on for themselves.
Stay on top of just industry news. There's so many professionals on just Twitter that you could randomly just post a question and you will get someone from Google to even answer you. So I think Twitter is a great just outlet for that. Stay on top of just like publications that focus on SEO. Roundtable is one of my favorites. Search engine Roundtable. Moz, the beginner's tool, just guide, sorry, is a great introductory to anyone who wants to learn about SEO. That's one that I pass on when there is a new member on the editorial team. I usually pass the just the Moz beginner's guide. And there's just so much out there. Even going back, I understand like LinkedIn is probably a little harder to find very niche SEO professionals there. But Upwork, I've seen some great content writers on their Wikipedia update professionals who will do that. So there's a lot of resources as well on Upwork.
There's a lot of people that will respond to you on Twitter that maybe don't know what they're talking about. Um, and same on Facebook. There's groups, and there are people that will be helpful and know what they're talking about, and then there's a lot of people that want work and maybe need a little more practice. Um, I would say that if you can on your own read enough to feel comfortable with the core concepts, that you should be able to find someone that can help you, because you'll know how to screen out the people that maybe need some more practice. Anyone that's coming to you and saying things about your meta keywords, probably a little behind the times. Maybe we don't need to talk to them. People that come to you with there's a lot of different red flags, and you're going to pick up on those as you're reading about the industry, and you're reading the like Search Engine Roundtable or Search Engine Land or Search Engine Journal. But even with some of those, you don't always know who they're letting write. And they try to filter those out, and they try to have good editorial policies. But every now and then somebody sneaks through, and then it's a big controversy. So I would say, see if you can identify reputable people on Twitter and follow them and try to get them to answer your questions, but don't just take the advice of any schmo that responds to you, especially if it's some schmo that's following 10,000 people and only has like 4 people following them. Probably not 100%, legit. Uh, be judicious. There's tons of information all over the place. Just do a little bit of research and make sure that you're getting the information from someplace that has other people that recommend it, not just, kind of exist in a vacuum and want you to spend $29.95 on their course.
So we have some time for some questions. We have some mics that we can hand out so we can answer, so we can hear your guys' questions a little bit better. So if you have a question, you raise your hand. We'll bring a mic to you back here in the corner.
Hi, ladies. I don't know how relevant this is. Hopefully, it's at least relevant enough that you can answer it. What would you recommend for a website that has a lot of spam scraper websites that takes your content and then links back to you? So then your website now has a lot of bad links, scraper sites that are linking to you. And my understanding is that Google downgrades your site for that. And I personally don't have time, to spend my entire day, every day, filing takedowns for these scraper sites.
Well, could I?
Yeah.
Okay. So, a couple things. Google claims that bad sites linking to you isn't going to hurt you because they're not going to penalize you for something you can't control like that. Where you have the larger problem is that they're taking your content and you're running into maybe one of those duplicate issues. So, as much as it is a pain, staying on top of that with takedown requests, and I know they're so complicated, ultimately would be your best bet. You can look at your logs and block the IP addresses of people that bots that you can tell are coming through and just scraping your content. So there's like a WordPress plugin that will throttle the traffic. Anyone who comes in and starts hitting requests too fast, you can block, because there's certain behaviors that a scraper will do that can be detected by one of these security plugins, and it'll trip the trigger, and you can block them. Then they just can't come to your site anymore. There are now, if they're manually scraping it, if it's a person and they open it up and they highlight it and then copy and paste it, that's a little bit more difficult to grab. If you are concerned about the quality of the links coming into you, you can make a disavow file. Those are actually pretty simple. I mean, it's not super simple, but it's not super hard. You can let Google know, say, hey, I have no idea what this guy's problem is. He shouldn't be linking to me. I disavow him. It's be gone kind of stuff. That should help. But usually we do that when someone's being malicious, like they're linking to me with the anchor text, free porn or something like that, because I don't want, obviously, A, that's not what's at my site, and B, that's mean. So you disavow those. I think your best bet is probably to try to find WordPress. Yeah.
Yep.
There's some plugins. I can talk to you later, but just you crank up those security settings so that if it thinks it's a bot, it slows it down. And if it persists, it blocks it. That might help. You know, if you spammers are like people that go through parking lots looking for unlocked cars. So if we lock your car doors, they'll move on to a softer target. Okay?
They're in full force.
You must have good content.
Right.
Hi.
So as SEO managers, I guess how much time do you split between spending time doing forward research of trends and things like, forward strategy versus looking back and maintaining, old content and doing like reports and analytics of the current stuff versus like taking time to really do research about things that don't exist on the site yet but could?
So it's definitely a balance. Legacy content, I think, in regards to just updating your evergreen content, um, even if it's a best movies on Netflix list that hasn't been updated over a year, that's a good opportunity to just update. So I think keeping a good balance between legacy content and where people are still searching for these things. I think updating those pages are really important. So I usually dedicate a good amount of time just deciphering per vertical, not every day, but I do identify where the opportunities are for legacy content. And then of course also making time for content creation. And once again, that goes back to using Google Search Console. Are we seeing high impressions below clicks for certain search queries? Are we missing a gap somewhere in there? Is this something that we have to fill? So asking those questions and just getting in the routine of balancing both legacy and also new content.
Yeah, we're kind of not in a position where the writers are interested in people visiting old content. They want new content, they want new things going out. So no, I don't do a lot of backward looking. We do a lot of forward looking though, just to make sure that, you know, we cover all the same sporting events every year. Are we answering people's questions? Are there particular aspects of the event that people want information about? Can we provide that information? Do we have a new player that's got maybe a celebrity girlfriend that we can, kind of work in there because that's maybe a little extra traffic we can pick up kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely. And if I tried to change one of their old articles, they would murder me.
Just, yeah.
Just we're almost in all evergreen. A few things that are say like an event for Charleston over back. Is it better than to make each year of URL that's like 2018, 2019, or to like keep going back every year and doing?
If you have a lot of backlinks to your primary article and it's not dated, you should keep using the one that's got all the links.
I wouldn't create a new page. Let's keep it. If it already has authority, let's keep it on the same URL alias.
Right here.
Now that Google has said that they won't be, really, you should not be bothered about your bad links, bad backlinks. Why do we really need to use the disavow tool then still?
The disavow?
Yeah. And in fact, why is it there then if it is redundant?
Well, that's a fine question. Why haven't they taken away if it's not needed?
Which means you do need to use it still? Was it just one random Google engineer who made that statement? That,
no.
Was it an official Google policy?
No, because I think I don't know exactly. All I know is if the opportunity still, if they're leaving that opportunity out there for me to file that.
So it's safer to use it.
Not in all situations, but I think if you genuinely have a concern, it's not going to hurt, right? So if someone's out to get you, right, and they're building tons of really vile links pointing them at your site, why roll the dice that it's not going to hurt you when you've got an opportunity to just, go disavow them real quick and be done with it. If the tool's available to me, I'm going to use it.
So it's good to play safe then.
I feel like it's good to play it safe. Yeah.
Thank you.
Time for. Yeah. So we have to cut this short. We do have a break coming up. Carolyn will be back up here for the end of the day Q&A. So you have plenty of opportunity. Lariza will be around as well. Thank you guys for coming up here.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.